Hello and good evening. My name is Dr. Deshawn Chapman, and I had the opportunity to co-edit a book with my colleague, Dr. Amanda Wilkerson, entitled From Student to Scholar, Mentoring Underrepresented Scholars in the Academy. And this is an excellent read. It lifts the voice by sharing the lived experiences of scholars as they transition from doctoral students to faculty members, and it tracks their journey as they develop their voice and they develop their scholarship, and it intersects all of their experiences with mentoring and how that was or was not a critical source of support in their development, and then how they in turn use mentoring as a professional practice to develop other scholars who will walk in their paths. Today, we have the opportunity to hear from individuals who have written chapters for our book. And what's unique about this group is that they have all earned either an undergraduate or a graduate degree from a historically Black college or university. So today, on behalf of Dr. Wilkerson and I, we'd like to welcome Dr. Moore, Dr. Harris Pierre, Dr. McNeil, and Mr. Frank Connick to the conversation, to Scholar Unplugged. So thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your time, and we're looking forward to an active and engaging and informative conversation. So I would like to start with you, Dr. Moore. If you could share with us, just introduce yourself and tell us why it was important for you to contribute a chapter to From Student to Scholar to the book.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman, for that wonderful introduction. Entire absolutely phenomenal, and that is one of the reasons that I felt it really important to contribute to this outstanding memoir. I want to call it a memoir, but it was just that I had the opportunity at my institution, which was an HBCU, to start a program there, and I believe it was probably one of the first of its kind for a doctoral program. And when I arrived at my former institution, I was just amazed that there wasn't a viable mentoring culture, having come from a mentoring culture at a PWI, and wanted to bring that in a way, a form of giving back. And so to contribute to this book would give the nuances, how we got started. And it was written with one of my mentees, one of the students in which was a first for that HBCU, and Dr. McNeil, who I'm really confident, gone on in those lessons, but in writing it with my mentee to give the professor perspective as well as the student perspective. And so stop me if I get too and to share, but it was really important to share with you that those steps, the realizations, the critical friends, the good and the bad, the mistakes, looking at the research, trying to add to the body of literature on what does a mentoring program.
Yeah, I think we're really excited to hear from you.
What does a mentoring program?
Sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. It was breaking up a little bit, so I'm talking over you. But I was just saying that that I'm really excited to hear from you and Dr. McNeil about how to establish a mentoring program, a viable mentoring program that has, and not just a program, but a culture of mentoring. Dr. Harris Pierre, what about you?
A culture.
So I am Dr. Shaywana Harris Pierre. I'm an assistant professor of professional counseling at Texas State University, and I hold a bachelor's degree in psychology from Hampton University, the real HU. I have to slide that in there. A master's degree from the University of Akron, and my PhD is from the University of Central Florida. And I felt it necessary and really important to contribute a chapter to From Student to Scholar because as a Black woman in academia, I realized throughout my educational tenure that mentorship is really important. And it's not that there is a hidden curriculum, so to speak, that academia needs, that I needed as a Black woman in order to navigate the world of academia. And so I wanted to share my experience with mentorship with other scholars.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Connick, what brings you here?
Um, well, I was given an opportunity, so that's what brought me here. But I also wanted to get my story out because I was I had it was a lot of roadblocks.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of roadblocks for me to earn this PhD, so I just felt it was necessary to try to get my story out to fellow minorities and African Americans um, coming along, and for them, not to give up because um, some of the things that I've gone through, I should have gave up a long time ago. But I met some good people who have taken me under their wing and decided to mentor me along the way. So,
Absolutely.
and that is kind of what kept me going. And so I just felt like this is a story that needed to be told.
Absolutely. How to persevere despite the roadblocks. Dr. McNeil, what about you? Dr. McNeil, are you with us? While we're transitioning to him, Dr. Wilkerson, I want to turn to you. You are, oh, there you go. All
Sorry
right.
about that. My mic was muted. I was talking away, and you heard none of that. Good spiel. So let's run it back.
Hey.
No, good evening, and thank everyone for being on the call. Thank you all for convening this, Dr. Chapman and Dr. Wilkerson, from day one, and including all the work that was uh, put in and all the tireless work to put this volume together. We certainly appreciate you for doing that, and glad to be a part. So, as my mentor, Dr. Moore mentioned, I uh, proud graduate of Florida A&M University in the Ed Leadership Department. Go Rattlers! And shouts out to Dr. Wilkerson and others. And so I was a great, extreme benefactor of the mentoring that took place within the Homes program. I believe that it was invaluable for me. I think that had it not been for that, there might have been a different outcome. Of course, I believe I would have still graduated and got my degree. But at the same time, 45% of people who try don't. And so it was because of things like mentoring that shepherded me through this program. So I felt like when I heard this would be a quality project and an opportunity for us um, to really kind of underscore the fact that we are not in this fight alone, and that there are mechanisms in place that do work in, albeit in pockets like this one, small groups of students. But the things that happen in these organizations was is golden. And so I thought it was just a really smart idea. I thought it was a really good concept and a mission to bring forth the mentorship that helps underrepresented people get through.
Thank you, Dr. McNeil. So, as we turn to you, Dr. Wilkerson, you are a co editor on this book. You are a proud HBCU graduate. So, can you talk to us about why this book and why now?
So I want to mention tonight that this is a fabulous conversation. And for those who will be viewing it in the future, I have the benefit of sitting among some pretty amazing colleagues. We all have something in common beyond being academics. We graduated or attended a historically Black college and university. But just to set the atmosphere, I do want to mention that the best university, the best HBCU in the world, starts with that A in front of that M, and I'm talking about Florida A&M University. So I'm gonna go ahead and strike for me and Terrence, and I'll bless all the Tuskegee and Hamptonites on here. Now, why this book? And why now? I would have to answer that question by saying, why not? I know as an academic in higher education, I've often asked myself a simple question: what are the ingredients to be successful? And I would have to say that it's like going into a shopping market and trying to figure out how to make a cake without having a recipe. And that's what this book is about. It's giving people an idea about what they can use to help them be successful as they matriculate through their own doctoral process and beyond. Because we have folks who wrote about their experiences as emerging scholars, and we even have folks that talked about their preeminent experiences. The other reason why it's important to put it within the context of tonight's conversation is because, and I say this often and I really mean it, but all that I am or ever hope to be is because of my parents, but also because of my HBCU. When I went to Florida A&M University, my parents didn't take me my first year, so that was a very unnerving experience because I had to figure out those loan financial aid lines on my own. But at the same time, when I went there, it was a nurturing environment where I saw other academics who looked like me, and they built into me this idea that I can do and be everything I want it to be. And I think it's important that we highlight HBCUs in this way, where we're able to talk about the contributions that they make to higher education through the scholars that they supported as they matriculated through their post-secondary experience. So why now? Why not? It's really important to figure out what the ingredients are, and I'm happy to be join you with all of my co-colleagues tonight.
Thank you. Well, let's open up the floor and dive into talk about that culture a little bit deeper with this first question. Now, see, I earned all of my degrees from PWI, so I'm very excited to ask this. Okay, thank you. So I'm so excited to ask this first question, which is, how did your Black college experience provide a powerful space to incubate you as an African American scholar? And the floor is open. Anyone can take a stab at that one.
Well, I'll say that I was like Amanda, very reaffirmed.
I'll, I'll be it. Go to Terrence.
Okay, so yeah, I was just saying I was very reaffirmed, like Dr. Wilkerson, in my gifts and my potential when on that HBCU campus. I think that part of it, as people are talking about HBCUs, that part of it also, often you have to experience that to really understand what that's about. I think that really prepared me, and then just a pattern of excellence that I began to notice once I was on the HBCU, and just really the legacy of accomplishment. It just kind of goes under the radar when you have large name institutions that are branded very well throughout the the nation. But HBCUs have, if you look under the hood, there's just so much success. And like all of us who were in the doctoral journey and looked at it at one point in time, you said, if that person got a doctorate, I can too. So it's a similar type of a situation that took place where I was reaffirmed in my potential by witnessing the excellence that was all around me. So
Dr. Moore, thank you, Terrence. Dr. Moore, I'm going to come to you next, but I'm going to add on a little piece that I think Terrence alluded to, is that okay, so I want to know how this space developed you, right? How did it incubate you as an African American scholar, but also how did that experience prepare you for academia? What do you think, Dr. Moore?
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you were talking to me.
Yes, ma'am.
As I stated, I probably didn't say earlier, I am a graduate of Tuskegee Institute and University in the 70s and 80s. I'm going to date myself, okay? And being a girl from the North, from New York, and coming south to school was an in itself. Um, Even though being up north and you think, oh, I would have seen this one, but to see students coming from parents that were judges and doctors and lawyers, and then students that were first generation, like me, first generation graduates. And so being in the School of Education, it took great pride in preparing you to be a teacher, an African American teacher, and to be a teacher. And that experience there of understanding our culture, where we come from, being in the South, understanding Jim Crow, all about education before Brown. Um, that really shaped me in how I worked with students and in my experience. And then I came to the academy, had the opportunity to work at an HBCU. Looking back on the experiences at my HBCU, the family structure. I think in our article we wrote about other mothering. Um, the other mothering factor, where the HB, that family factor, that familial, that we just not only do we take as professors, or if you happen to have a mentoring relationship, but you treated us like we were your children, and with guidance. So that all shaped me as far as what I was expecting when I came into the academy, to model those type of features that I felt would make a great mentoring culture. And of course the culture of expectancy, and the culture of you can do this, you can do anything you want to do, you are proud, you take pride in your work, you take ownership and accountability.
Thank you. So, do you all think that Black colleges see their students differently than their post secondary counterparts? And if so, how do you think that impacts mentoring?
So I'm gonna go ahead and answer that question and emphatically say that I do sense that there's a difference. I had the benefit of being able to get my undergraduate degree at Florida A&M University, as well as my master's. And after that time, I went to a PWI. And so the day that I walked into FAMU, one of the things that was sort of planted in me is this idea that I had the potential and the promise to be everything that I wanted to be, and that they were there to work that potential in me. They were going to work alongside me. They were going to give me the support that I need. And even when I didn't see myself the way that they saw me, they still engaged me at Florida A&M University in a very empowered way. Unfortunately, that was not always my experience at a PWI. I felt like at a PWI, it's like going into and I'm sorry for using these analogies of going into a store, but going into a store and knowing that you have all of the most beautiful clothing that you want to buy, but not having the resources to take that beautiful dress off the hanger and walk out the store with that dress. What do I mean? I went to a school and there was an opportunity to be mentored and as a doctoral student, write with a faculty member and work on grants. Those opportunities were available, but I was never selected for those opportunities by faculty members, and they never selected me. And I will frankly tell you that there was a pattern among some of the friends that I went to school with where it was consistent. We all had something in common, in that we weren't readily selected for these opportunities, or if we were, they were few and far in between. And so they knew you could be successful. In fact, that's probably why you were admitted. But that road, that journey to success at a PWI, you mostly did it alone. So there were times where I felt lonely. Whereas at my HBCU, Dr. Moore called it mothering, but I would refer to it as empowering, because I always felt like they were the fuel to help me figure out what my future would be.
That is very insightful. I often felt like in my own doctoral journey, it was more of a weeding out process than a development process. I'm interested to see what other scholars think about it.
So I think I want to echo what both Dr. Moore and Dr. Wilkerson have already said. But at Hampton, it's always like the motto is an education for life. And so that's the culture of the university. And other students, like my peers while I was there, as well as other faculty members, they instilled that education for life. So it wasn't necessarily just about, you know, learning the coursework or learning the content in each course. It was about learning how you can apply that as a Black person in this country and in this world, and how you can walk through the world and whatever your chosen profession is, confident as a Black person and prepared and competent. And so I think that specifically with my faculty members at Hampton, what I got was again that relationship that was a little bit different. It wasn't a feeling of like, this is just my professor and they're just teaching me, you know, Psych 101 or whatever the class is. No, this person actually cares about my growth and my development, not only personally, but professionally as well. And so I think that, like, because I've attended 2 PWIs since Hampton, and in my experience at the PWIs, I definitely, I haven't gotten that same relationship with a professor, like in the classroom, feeling like my professor cares about not only teaching the coursework, but teaching that education for life. I haven't gotten that since I left Hampton.
Excellent. While Dr. Harris Pierre was speaking, Dr. Moore highlighted for us the important point that's being elevated in these conversations around relationship building. So currently, Black scholars, Black academics such as yourselves, are reframing conversations about about the conditions and your experiences in the academy. So can you all speak to kind of explain some of the large racialized discrepancies that exist pertaining to mentoring in higher education?
Well, yeah, I could do that in actually looking at some research that I'm currently conducting. I can't speak on too much, but I'm working on a large grant, and a part of that, and it's all about mentoring. And so the feedback from certain students that I've encountered who attend PWIs versus HBCUs, the one thing that I just want to highlight in that is that research opportunities can certainly be impacted by the relationship building that takes place. And so there's evidence that in this particular grant, which deals more with the STEM community, there's evidence that socialization might put students in positions to actually work more directly or closer with a faculty member, and in doing so, positions that student to attain a different character quality of education there at that institution. And so and everything subsequent to that. And so I just want to kind of share, if I could talk about that briefly. Having attended a PW, an HBCU, and now working for an HBCU, I might not be the person to give the full perspective on this question, but I wanted to offer that before the others got going. And so there's just that little piece of it. And I have another little piece that I could chime in with, but I'd really love to hear the colleagues on this as well. Oh, one other thing that I would say is that within the Holmes program, as far as mentoring was concerned regarding race, one thing that I observed from a vantage point of an HBCU is that my PWI colleagues were more inclined to do work related to race relations, to culture, cultural responsive teaching, implicit bias, and social cultural, social political, work, and that type of thing, because I think that they were confronted with that at a different
Mm.
level than we were at the HBCUs, where we generally tended to focus our research topics on topics related to principal leadership and straightforward, straight ahead, K-12 or higher ed topics. And so I just want to make that distinction of what I did observe from my vantage point on that.
It's very interesting that you say that, because attending a doctoral program at a PWI, I felt like my non-Black colleagues often focused on more practitioner related topics, whereas myself and some of my other colleagues or classmates of color were more focused on experiences of students of color in academia and in K-12 education or whatever realm that we were conducting our research. Dr. Moore, what would you like to add to this conversation?
Okay. I probably am lagging, but I attended HBCU and a PWI. The PWI was my terminal degree. But I'll be honest with you, I received absolutely phenomenal mentoring in university, and it was through the Holmes program. And really, I looked at the mentoring when I came along in my undergrad and my master's program at Tuskegee. Like I said earlier, it was more of a family relationship, and there was the term mentoring was used. It was like, okay, I saw something in you, offered you opportunities, but that word mentoring had not been coined for that to describe relationship. When I really got into mentoring was when I went to the PWI to get my doctoral degree after having been out of the uh, received my master's 20 years earlier. And I can say that the mentoring at PWI was phenomenal. There were opportunities to do research. There were some that focused on relations as African American doctoral students, but we were focused in our various disciplines. But and I think that Auburn did an excellent job with the mentoring aspect, seeing to your emotional needs, your financial needs, if you had social needs. And I mean, they really built a mentoring culture. The Homes program did extended out to those who were not home. When I went to my HBCU, I saw that in my truth, there was not a mentoring culture per se for doctoral students. Not only for the doctoral students, there was not a mentoring culture for an assistant professor, and which we've not touched upon that because as you go through in the professor, there's mentoring for junior professors to understand how to acclimate into the culture. I did not have that at my HBCU. Okay, I didn't have that for me. For me, I was a mentor because I saw that students, the Terrences of them, they were like, well, we want to go to conferences or we want to understand our research topics. So building that mentor culture there did not give me the opportunity to be mentored because I needed that mentoring too. And I had gone through programs in Auburn that prepared you to be a professor, a mentoring thing. But when I got into the professor, I didn't see that. What was told to me that to expect this of the professor. So I hope I've tied in some things as far as what I experienced as my mentoring, how I came about to mentoring, and then the application of the mentoring.
I think you tied in some things, and you also bring up a really great point that leads to my next question, which is what research needs to be done
Oh yeah.
to consider contextualizing mentoring disparities based on race. And it doesn't have to just be with doctoral students. I think we should include faculty members in this conversation as well.
So one of the things I think we confirmed by allowing everyone to write about their stories regarding mentoring in the academy is that these experiences are certainly not new, but they have not been adequately addressed. I think one of the things that needs to be firmly researched is the systematic way to mentoring instead of using our entry into the academy, whether as students or scholars, as a proxy for some sort of hazing process, right? Where, you go through experiences sometimes and they're not interconnected with your work. It needs to be a systemized way of mentoring scholars. Then I think that there needs to be more research done on how you mentor scholars at the different levels that they're in, and not just as a doctoral student. I think that there was so much work that we reviewed prior to even submitting the proposal regarding the work that we wanted to write about that didn't include what do you do to support that first year faculty member. That's certainly missing in the literature. And I would say, because I want to hear everybody's else perspective, is that I would love to see the creation of a center that really focuses on mentoring. And how do we do this within the context of mentoring the other? Let's be real, higher education was not created with anyone in mind other than white men. And I think right now we're going through this symbiotic process within higher education where we're starting to reevaluate our goals, our missions, and our values as a result of what's going on around us in the United States right now. With that being said, it's really important that we have a center that focuses on how do you even bridge the gap where you allow scholars to come in and adequately contribute to a system that was not created to allow them in the first place. So that is some important considerations when we think about research.
Absolutely. And I think to add to that, Dr. Chapman, when you mentioned like what's a racialized discrepancy, to me, what comes to mind is representation, and as a faculty member, as a junior faculty member myself, representation at multiple levels of professorship is really important. And I think like the research that needs to be done, I think like research on bias in hiring and promotion practices should be done to kind of expose what this looks like, because there is bias there. We just witnessed, excuse me, a national story about a counselor educator, Paul Harris, who was denied tenure because, but the decision has now been reversed, I believe, at UVA for reasons including the white faculty compromise committee's impression that his research seemed to be self-published because it was in the Journal of African American Males in Education. And so, and this was just the national story. This is just the one that made the news. So just imagine how many all-white tenure committees invalidate and discount the work of Black scholars due to ignorance and bias, which creates an environment in which Black scholars aren't able to excel. They aren't able to get to the associate level or the full professor level. And thus we have a small amount of Black people in those levels able to mentor junior faculty throughout the process. Because being a Black academic is, it's different. Like Dr. Wilkerson said, the ivory tower is ivory for a reason. And it's a system in which, or that has been set up to benefit specifically people who do not look like me. And so I need faces that look like mine to help guide me through the things that I don't know as a faculty member. When I started my job at Texas State, I had to, I specifically reached out to other Black women faculty members in the university because I'm the only one in my program and the only tenure track one in my department. So I had to search a little bit for some mentorship, and there were things that these women told me that I had no idea, or I would have never thought of, because again, I don't come from academicians. And so I don't have that family, kind of hand-me-down information. And so just reaching out, I had to go outside of even my college to find someone who could give me some insight into what navigating this academic, this world looks like.
I just want to add something that Shay mentioned, Dr. Harris Pierre mentioned, that I think is critically important. Most of the mentoring that I receive has been outside of my university in many cases, with colleagues who are across the country. And while I think some may find that as a plus, that I'm able to network beyond where I'm at, it can be a very constrained and complex situation, because ultimately what that is indirectly saying is that it's hard to find support where I'm at. And that can be very complex depending on where the type of departments you in, the culture of those departments. And again, it goes back to why this book was needed, because when we talk about that doctoral journey, it's one thing to talk about the academic side of it, but a part of what we do is far more than writing, research, and teaching. You have to build collegiality with your counterparts in order to even make tenure. And so this conversation about mentoring is critically important. And I'm happy that she brought up that point about, like, how do you seek out mentorship?
So thank you all. So let's wrap this up with something very actionable. What is one, briefly tell me, one actionable strategy that can be employed to dismantle mentoring disparities in post-secondary education? Mr. Connick, we'll start with you.
Well, I wanted to touch on one of the first questions.
Sure.
I just didn't get a chance. So uh, when we talk about what was my expectations, because I got my master's from Clark Atlanta, and so here I was just in Atlanta, um, and I used to just always go in the office with my department chair, and I would ask him any recruiters came by, any new info, and he said, yeah, we got these people from University of Florida. He came by, and he uh he gave me his business card. He made a copy. You need to call him right now. He said he's gonna nurture you, and he's gonna take care of you, and you're gonna get through there. And I said, what you talking about? And he said, you need to call him right now. And he wouldn't let me leave the office till I called him right then. So I said, okay. So I called him, and he happened to be associate dean of the graduate school, and they got me on the visit. And the next fall, I was there. Okay, so I had a lot of expectations due to what they had told my department chair, Clark Atlanta, and then what they started telling me when I went to this campus visit. I went to the summer program. Now, soon as some heat came, everybody abandoned ship.
So
I was calling people, and everybody just disappeared. So I just had a different expectation of what that mentorship was going, and it was a lot different
it
from what I had came from
It sounds like you
Clark.
were looking for something, or was told that you would experience something closer to what Dr. Wilkerson described earlier about that empowerment. So if I could pull one actionable strategy for, supporting mentoring and dismantling some of the disparities that occur, I think it would be around putting together processes that intentionally empower. Anyone else have an actionable strategy? Thank you, Mr. Connick.
I do. So I think conducting like equity audits for the university or for each college specifically would be like an amazing start. The College of Education where I am at Texas State just this past year did an equity audit specifically for students, though, to see what students, like what's the racial makeup of our students and how do they matriculate through the program. And I thought that was an amazing initiative. But I also wish that we could also do that for faculty members. Like, what is the racial makeup of our faculty, and what are the needs of our faculty, and how do we make sure that the junior faculty or junior faculty of color or junior faculty who are marginalized in any way, sorry, got a little glare happening here, are getting what they need and are able to be successful in the tenure process. So I think an equity audit or something similar to that, targeting the racial makeup of faculty members and the proportion of faculty members of color at each level of professorship would be helpful.
That's great. Dr. Wilkerson, what do you think? And then Dr. Moore, we'll come to you.
I have to be honest, Shay hit it right on the head, because one of the things that I think is a critical concern in higher education is the institutional racism. That's not going to go away just because we decide to hire faculty members. As a matter of fact, I'm really kind of concerned that we're using people's bodies and experiences as experiments to see if they will, be successful or not in that tenure process, without providing some support and really adequately understanding the I would say the climate that is in higher education that creates some of these terrible instances of racism. So, with that in mind, I think that is really important that higher education really looks at intentionally eradicating institutional racism, and doing that not just on the student level, but on the faculty as well as staff level.
Excellent. Dr. Moore, what do you want to offer? What's your actionable strategy?
Just to add, my strategy would be that we build mentoring programs within the culture. So, for instance, there is a mentoring program at an HBCU may not look like a mentoring program at a PWI because of the context of culture. So we look at, for instance, for HBCUs, when you look at their strategies for mentoring, from my truth and from what I've seen, I just asked Terrence a question. They need to really start getting into build the literature base, build models for mentoring, and we look at what we call a preparing professors program that can look at all as whether you're in a regional university, a PWI Research One, a PWI Research Intensive, look at context. That's all I have to say.
Excellent. Thank you. Dr. McNeil, take us home. What's your actionable strategy?
Well, I want to agree with the sentiments of my colleagues here. First of all, and those equity audits seem to be a great way for us to do that. And from a leadership perspective, I think that's something that should be done. Coupled with what my suggestion would be, as Dr. Wilkerson said, an intentional approach towards the professional development and building positive mentor programs. Right, being intentional about mentoring either in a group setting or to establish peer-to-peer relationships about how to better reach and serve the students that we have in our ranks and our programs. Mentoring does two things. It empowers the mentors with the insights needed to do a good job at that work, but then it also kind of operationalizes and socializes the practice throughout an institution or throughout a department. And so once you start getting everyone involved in this act of mentoring, you have a fertile ground and a climate where students can get what they need to get these degrees. And so that's where I'd like to include an intentional approach towards professional development around mentoring.
Thank you all for a great conversation. I'm in here a little hot. I don't know if it's the conversation or if it's this light I got shining on me, but this was very good. And I think it was a refreshingly honest conversation about how you mentor in a system that was not designed for Black scholars. So thank you for your candid comments that I'll try to kind of summarize some of the highlights. What I got from this conversation is a couple of important components of mentoring is fostering that idea that education is not just for your academic content area, but it's for life. That relationship building is key. that mentoring relationships help build the social capital, which is key to advancement. And often scholars of color don't get those opportunities when they're at a PWI, as well as opportunities to do research are paramount. They prepare us for graduation and for entering and earning that tenure and promotion. Research. We need to research systematic ways to mentor scholars at different levels, doctoral students, junior faculty, and be bold enough to conduct research on bias in the tenure, promotion, and hiring practices. And for our actionable strategies, what folks can do right now is to intentionally approach professional development for mentoring, really make that a part of the culture. Build mentoring programs to fit the context of the institution and even the context of the program. I would go a little further to say that. To conduct equity audits. I thought that was a brilliant idea, Dr. Harris. And last, to not just address, but to intentionally eradicate institutional racism. Yes. Thank you all. That was so incredibly powerful. And I am excited to see. I know people are going to be commenting, tagging, sharing, liking this conversation. But my hope is that they will take the nuggets here today and turn it into action. And I hope that we are able to see the fruits of that work as well. So thank you all for being here tonight and for your words of wisdom.
Thank you for having us.